Welcome back to Tamer Bowling Video Ball Reviews. Today we are testing the new Motiv Evoke Hysteria. First impressions, the Hysteria is the real deal. Feels like something special. If you like what we do, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and check us out on Patreon. Let's start with the fact that the Evoke Hysteria was a perfect matchup to this pattern, which made this test quite fun and easy. Our pattern is now consistently a 44 foot, 25.8 mil, 12 to 1 house shot, which is nice for testing. We've come to find that although there is a reasonable volume, cleaner covers tend to be a little bit more effective as the oil is spread over a longer pattern and more concentrated in the center versus the track. But we also find that big cores tend to look good, so it's no surprise, as has been in the past, that mid-defined balls, basically shiny ASIMs, work quite well here. The Evoke Hysteria fits perfectly into that slot, is both amenable to release changes while still being very versatile and forgiving, and that's a special combination. Sometimes I get locked in a specific zone in a house shot, especially on sort of longer patterns like this. Not so with the Hysteria. I could float it direct while still being able to move in and generate angle with no issues. It's rare, as most balls that generate angle are hard to play direct and vice versa. The cleaner cover finish with 4000, where you see some underlying grit when you look closely, I think is a perfect finish. The larger core that is basically low medium RG, medium high diff, with a reasonable but not insane mass bias just seems to be an ideal combination. The ball feels ever so slightly forward, so if you pay attention, you can see its asymmetric nature while still being continuous enough to not feel like it just stops. This ball made me feel very comfortable, and I struck a lot. I brought along a few balls to the left on Motiv's chart to give you an idea. At first, the Primal shock, and you immediately see how much longer and rounder it is compared to the Hysteria. And, just moving a couple of boards in, and you see what I mean about being trapped in a very specific track area on a house shot. And also why the Hysteria is so special. The Primal is a solid, making it smoother, like Motiv suggests, but also significantly less ball, it appears, until you move left. With the original solid Evoke beach ball, you can clearly see the relationship. I don't know, it's like a lazy Hysteria, but it doesn't sound flattering, but it just means it reads a little earlier and a little smoother down lane. The two balls kind of have a deceptive shape in that the core is more reliable than it might appear when it starts to transition. Then the Onyx Jackal, and immediately you can see it's more of everything as you would expect. Stronger, earlier, defined shape. That's a special ball. Tyler's up next, and the Evoke Hysteria serves that mid-defined purpose as expected. It's a really nice shiny ASIM, but again, it's 4000 with some underlying grit instead of a shined or compounded finish. I really like what Motiv did with the out-of-box finish, and I think it's ideal where the mid-defined has some underlying traction instead of being shiny and goes really long and then responds very hard to friction. Instead, it feels like it has some traction on lane, just enough to make it feel like it's not going to skid for days, but at the same time has angularity that is deceptive because it's blended just enough. Imagine hockey stick and then imagine banana, and this ball finds a happy medium with the right balance of cover strength, cover finish, and core strength. As you watch Tyler throw shots, you'll note that the Evoke Hysteria doesn't feel lazy. Of course, you can break the ball reaction by being too deep, as it's a mid-defined and not a mid-late shape. But generally speaking, it doesn't shy away from showing off its angular capabilities. To that end, Tyler had more forgiveness from out than in. Although this is a longer 40-foot pattern where the volume is in the middle, it just not quite as forgiving as some house patterns from in. But the ball has a bit stronger read, so this is one where you cheat to the outside misses versus in. A quick look at the Evoke Solid, and you see a similar shape overall, but a lot smoother, earlier read, smoother response down lane. The original Evoke is quite a versatile piece, and wrapping in a pearl cover amps it up when you want a firmer move down lane, essentially. A couple shots with the Primal shock is enough to show you how much less it is for Tyler. Just reads less of the body of the pattern. The Jackal Onyx, again, clearly earlier, still pretty firm down lane, so it's a lot more ball. The firmness down lane, while still being early, makes it a special, strong, defined shape, but we've discussed that already. Last but not least, we have Brian testing the Motiv Evoke Hysteria. And in general, Brian saw pretty much what we saw with some nuances. First, the consistent features. The Evoke family shape is pretty similar for him in terms of relativity, which I'll show you a little later. The Hysteria itself was reasonable with its length while providing a strong arc for Brian. Probably a higher than average punch for him on the back end or back end response. He felt his position was a little steeper than usual to take advantage of the back end motion and give it some room. He felt also that it gave him some room out with ball recovery, but there was also a couple of tugs that surprisingly held pocket. And his feedback was that he was somewhat limited to a specific place where he could play, but within that it felt fantastic. And maybe that's a little distinct characteristic for his style, and probably not very surprising for a cleaner ball on a longish pattern. The video shows he was able to make some moves, but he felt like he had to manipulate it a little bit more than necessary. That said, it was really fun to test the ball while striking quite handily throughout. Now with the original Evoke, he saw much more of a pure arcing shape, which actually was a little more tricky in that it reads earlier, so he wouldn't get the hold in, but also the arc meant that he couldn't send it wide like he did with the Hysteria. The Hysteria, simply a better matchup to this pattern, and that's fine. Here, the Primal Shock just doesn't seem to read the body of the pattern at all for him. Not much different than me, except mine is usable, just more direct. For him, the Primal Shock is no use here. A quick look at a ball that is quickly becoming a favorite for Brian, and me too, I might have had the Jackal Onyx. You see the difference in how balls relate in the arsenal. It's clearly a stronger ball with its mid-lane read and required a 4-2 move in, but it quintessentially fits in the strong defined part of the bag in that it still has a strong move down lane as well. Bottom line, we don't often test a ball where all three testers have an excellent look. Usually there's some variation. I'm happy to say that at least for the initial testing here, everyone was very happy with what they saw in the Motiv Evoke Hysteria. Seems like an excellent option so far in the mid-defined slot in the bag. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.